I want you to think about the last time you made a food choice specifically because you believed it was good for your heart. Maybe it was the orange juice you poured this morning because it said 100% natural on the label. Maybe it was the whole grain bread you chose instead of white because you have been choosing it for 20 years and you know it is the better option. Maybe it was the low-fat yogurt in your refrigerator right now, the one with the heart logo on the packaging, the one a doctor may have literally recommended to you at some point. You made those choices carefully. You made them because you were paying attention, because you were taking your health seriously, because you wanted to do the right thing for your body. What I need to tell you today is going to be uncomfortable. Not because you did anything wrong, but because 3 of the foods that have been most aggressively marketed to adults over 60 as heart-healthy choices are, based on what the research now clearly shows, actively working against the cardiovascular system you have been trying to protect. And the most frustrating part is that the damage is invisible. There is no immediate signal. You do not feel your blood pressure rise after breakfast. You do not feel the inflammation building in your artery walls over months and years. You feel fine. You feel like someone who is making responsible choices. And the process continues underneath that feeling, quietly and without interruption, every single morning. My name is Dr. James Harlow. I have practiced internal medicine and cardiology for over 25 years, and I have sat with enough patients who were genuinely shocked, genuinely hurt, to learn that the breakfast they had been eating faithfully for a decade was contributing to the very problem they were trying to prevent. I want to have that conversation with you now, before you are sitting in my office or someone else's, before the damage has accumulated to the point of a diagnosis. Let me start with the one that surprises people the most, the first food, the glass of orange juice you pour every morning. Picture the kitchen counter, the glass, the carton that says natural, no pulp, 100% juice. You pour it, you drink it while you check your phone or look out the window, and you feel like you have done something good for yourself before the day has even started. Here is what is actually happening in your body in the 30 minutes after that glass. A standard 8-ounce serving of commercial orange juice contains around 25 to 26 grams of sugar. To put that in a frame of reference that might land differently, that is roughly the same sugar concentration per ounce as a can of Coca-Cola. The difference is that Coca-Cola is universally understood to be a sugary drink that should be consumed occasionally. Orange juice is universally understood to be health food. The reason this distinction matters so much after 60 is about how your body handles a sudden surge of sugar and how that handling changes as you age. When you were younger, your body was extremely efficient at managing blood sugar spikes. Insulin, the hormone that clears sugar from the bloodstream, was released quickly, worked powerfully, and the spike resolved fast. By 60, that efficiency has declined in the majority of adults. The insulin response is slower, the spike lasts longer, and while that sugar is elevated in your bloodstream, it is doing something to your blood vessels that most people have never had explained to them. High blood sugar causes the inner lining of your blood vessels, the layer that keeps them smooth and flexible, to become inflamed. It causes your vessels to constrict. It raises your blood pressure in the minutes and hours following the spike. Repeated 3 times a day, every day, over years, this cycle of spike and inflammation is one of the primary drivers of the arterial stiffening and the rising blood pressure that most physicians simply attribute to age. The vitamin C in orange juice is real. The potassium is real. But you can get both, in the same quantities, without the sugar spike, from eating a whole orange. The difference between a whole orange and a glass of orange juice is the fiber. The fiber in the fruit slows the release of sugar into the bloodstream so gradually that the spike never happens. The blood vessel inflammation never happens. The blood pressure effect never happens. Same fruit, same nutrients. Completely different outcome for your arteries, simply because of whether the fiber is present. Starting tomorrow morning, eat the orange. Do not drink it. The second food, whole grain bread. I want to be careful here because I am not telling you that whole grain bread is as bad as white bread. It is not. The fiber content is higher. The glycemic response is modestly slower. On a direct comparison between the two, whole grain is the better choice. That part of the conventional wisdom is accurate. What is not accurate is the idea that whole grain bread is a heart-healthy food in any meaningful absolute sense. And this distinction between relatively better and actually good is one that has been systematically blurred by decades of food marketing and simplified dietary guidance. Here is the reality. A slice of commercial whole grain bread raises your blood sugar to a level that, in the research literature, is comparable to eating multiple teaspoons of table sugar. The fiber in the bread softens the peak slightly. It does not prevent the spike. And for adults over 60, whose blood sugar regulation is already less efficient than it was at 40, that spike, happening at breakfast before anything else is in the stomach, is hitting a system that is least equipped to handle it. There is a second problem that has nothing to do with the grain itself. Pick up almost any commercial loaf of whole grain bread and read the full ingredient list. You will find sugar, sometimes in 2 or 3 different forms, including high fructose corn syrup, molasses, or cane sugar, added to improve flavor and extend shelf life. You will find refined vegetable oils, soybean oil, canola oil, used in the baking process. You will find a list of preservatives and conditioning agents that have no nutritional value whatsoever. The word whole grain on the front of the package describes one ingredient. It says nothing about the 10 other ingredients that have been added to the product around that grain. The bread that does not produce these problems is real sourdough, not the bread labeled sourdough at the supermarket that is simply commercial bread with a slightly different flavor. Genuine sourdough made through a long fermentation process with a live culture is metabolically a completely different product. The fermentation breaks down much of the starch before it ever reaches your digestive system. The organic acids produced during fermentation slow glucose absorption further. The glycemic response to genuine sourdough is dramatically lower than to commercial whole grain bread. Multiple studies have documented this difference specifically. If you can find a bakery that makes genuine sourdough, or if you are willing to make it yourself, which is simpler than most people assume, that is the bread that will not work against your blood pressure at breakfast. The third food, low-fat flavored yogurt. This one requires me to say something that I recognize sounds strange coming from a physician of my generation. The dietary fat guidance that dominated medicine for 3 decades was, in significant part, wrong. Not completely wrong, but wrong enough that the corrections the research has forced over the past 15 years represent one of the most substantial revisions in modern nutritional science. The message that fat, particularly saturated fat from dairy, was dangerous for the heart led to the creation of an enormous category of low-fat food products. Low-fat yogurt became a staple of the health-conscious breakfast. It was endorsed by physicians. It carried heart-healthy logos. For many adults over 60, choosing low-fat yogurt feels like one of the most responsible nutritional decisions they make. Here is what happens when you remove the fat from yogurt. The fat is what gives yogurt its flavor and its texture. When you remove it, you remove both. And the food industry, needing to sell a product that people will actually want to eat, replaces what was lost. The replacement is sugar. A standard 6-ounce container of commercial low-fat flavored yogurt contains between 18 and 30 grams of added sugar. More sugar than many desserts, consumed first thing in the morning on what is often an otherwise empty stomach. You removed the fat to protect your arteries. The manufacturer replaced it with the ingredient that most directly drives the morning blood sugar spike, the insulin surge, the vascular inflammation, and the blood pressure elevation you were trying to avoid. And there is a second cost to removing the dairy fat that most people have never been told. Vitamins A, D, E, and K, the fat-soluble vitamins, are carried in dairy fat. When the fat is removed, those vitamins are removed with it. In a population where vitamin D deficiency is already extremely common, and where vitamin D plays direct roles in blood pressure regulation, immune function, and cardiovascular health, removing one of the primary dietary fat vehicles for vitamin D absorption is not a neutral act. Full-fat plain Greek yogurt is a fundamentally different product. It contains the fat that carries the fat-soluble vitamins. It contains minimal natural sugars and no added sugars. It is high in protein, which moderates the blood sugar response to everything else eaten alongside it. And the large-scale research that has emerged over the past decade, including studies following hundreds of thousands of people across multiple countries, has found that full-fat dairy consumption is associated with reduced cardiovascular risk, not increased. Full-fat plain Greek yogurt with a handful of berries and a tablespoon of ground flaxseed is a breakfast that works with your cardiovascular system. The low-fat flavored yogurt you have been eating faithfully is a breakfast that every morning is doing the opposite of what you believe it is doing. I want to stop here and say something directly to the person who has been eating exactly this breakfast: orange juice, whole grain toast, low-fat yogurt, and who is now sitting with the uncomfortable feeling of having done the wrong thing while believing they were doing the right thing. You were not wrong to trust the guidance you received. That guidance was mainstream. It was delivered by sources that had every credential to be trusted. You followed it carefully and consistently, which is exactly what a health-conscious person does. The science has moved. The understanding is more complete now than it was when those recommendations were formed. And the response to that is not guilt. It is simply an update. 3 items on a shopping list, starting this week. Eat the whole orange instead of drinking the juice. Replace commercial whole grain bread with genuine sourdough or a protein-based breakfast. Replace low-fat flavored yogurt with full-fat plain Greek yogurt. 3 changes. The same breakfast table. A completely different cardiovascular outcome. Every single morning for the years ahead. If this video gave you something specific and actionable, share it today with someone whose breakfast looks like the one I described. The information is simple. The impact over time is not. Subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment below telling me which of these 3 surprised you the most. I read every one. I am Dr. James Harlow. Take care of your heart. I will see you in the next video.